Shanquella, can you at least fight back?
No. Why she not fighting back?
At least something. At least fight back, something.
Get up, bro. Get up.
The death of a Charlotte woman while on vacation has the attention of federal investigators.
This weekend, hundreds attended her funeral at Macedonia Baptist Church. Activist Tamika Mallory spoke at the service, promising to help solve the mystery of her untimely death.
Our kids, our teenagers should be able to go hang out. Our young kids should be able to play outside. This should be allowed. It shouldn't always be violence every time the young adults decide to go and hang out.
And I'm tearing up because it is, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and to think that I'll let her go out into the world and something like this tragically happened to have a good time at a luau. I'm heartbroken.
9 women were laughing at a backyard luau in Chicago when a black Jeep rolled up out of the dark and a man leaned out of it and shouted a few words before the shooting started.
A man pulled up and he yelled out, "I got you," before he started firing at a crowd of 9 women.
One of the women in that yard was 21-year-old Kenesha Gaines, a mother of 2 who called herself the Queen of the World, and she was hit in the face. Watch her own mother try to say it out loud.
Unbearably hurt. That's my oldest daughter.
This is a woman who had already buried 1 child to gunfire, now standing over a second, and years later, not one single person has been arrested for any of it. We are coming back to Kenesha and to the 8 women bleeding in that yard beside her, and to the reason her family stopped trusting the people who were supposed to be her friends. But before we get into Kenesha's story, we have to start with this one, because it opens the exact same way, with a celebration, a group of so-called friends, and a young black woman who flew out happily and came home in a box. Her name was Shanquella Robinson, and she was 25 years old from Charlotte, North Carolina. She had graduated from Winston-Salem State University and turned herself into a real businesswoman, running a children's hair braiding service called Exquisite Kids and a women's fashion line called Exquisite Boutique, and she had a following online who watched her hustle every day. She had no serious health problems that anybody knew about. She was young, healthy, and ambitious, which is exactly why what happened to her makes so little sense to the people who loved her. On October 28, 2022, Shanquella flew to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico for what was supposed to be a luxury getaway, and she was traveling with 6 people she thought of as friends. That group of 6 would soon become famous online under the name the internet gave them, the Cabo 6, and their names are worth remembering because their versions of events are the reason this case is still open. They were Khalil Cook, Malik St. Patrick Dyer, Winter Essence Donovan, Elise Michelle Hyatt, Nazir Wiggins, and a woman named Daishana Jackson, who has since legally changed her name to Imani Green. They all checked into a high-end villa in the Puerto Los Cabos resort, and the plan was to celebrate. What happened instead is that Shanquella was dead inside of 24 hours. Here is where the story starts to twist, and it never really stops twisting. The very first thing the friends told the world was that Shanquella drank too much and her body simply gave out. That was the story they carried back across the border and repeated to her own mother. The very first call to her mother reportedly came from one of the group, Khalil Cook, telling her that alcohol poisoning had taken her daughter and that medical help was already on the way, which is why the family has said Shanquella sounded like she had just been having a good time on the trip right up until the calls turned frightening. But the timeline that investigators later pieced together from that day does not read like a night of drinking gone wrong. It reads like something the group tried to manage quietly right up until it was far too late to manage anything at all. The group had rented that villa for only a few nights, and the small, uneasy details from those first hours did not surface until much later. According to a timeline that Shanquella's attorneys pieced together from statements resort staff gave to Mexican prosecutors, the group had dinner the night they arrived, and even then, Shanquella looked isolated and out of place among the people she had flown down with. Investigators were later able to place the attack in the early morning of October 29th, sometime between roughly 7 and 8:30, simply by studying the way the sunlight fell across a headboard in the leaked video. By the middle of that same afternoon, one of the group messaged a resort worker asking for the nearest medical service, and a few hours after that message, Shanquella was gone. That very night, the group asked for a ride, had the driver drop them near a hotel by the airport, and never went back to the villa at all. According to the detailed report on Shanquella's final hours, a doctor was called to the villa at around 2:13 in the afternoon on October 29th, after she was found unresponsive. Dr. Carolina Beatriz Ornelas Gutierrez arrived roughly an hour later and found her dehydrated, disoriented, and appearing intoxicated. The doctor wanted her taken to a hospital. The group refused and asked for her to be treated right there in the room instead. During that in-room treatment, Shanquella suffered a seizure at around 4:13, and then her breathing failed and her heart stopped. Paramedics finally arrived at 4:49 and worked on her for close to an hour, but she was pronounced dead at 5:57 that evening. The very first police report, written from what the friends and the doctor said, called it alcohol poisoning and noted no visible injuries at all. The paramedics did not give up quickly, and the record shows they ran 14 rounds of CPR, gave 5 doses of adrenaline, and delivered 6 defibrillator shocks over the course of that final hour, yet none of it brought her back. That should have been the end of it, a tragic accident far from home. Instead, it became the beginning, because within days, the friend's story and the physical evidence started pointing in 2 completely opposite directions, and one piece of that evidence would soon be playing on phones all over the world. That piece of evidence was a video. In the middle of November of 2022, footage leaked out that flipped the entire case on its head, and once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. It showed Shanquella naked in the villa, being punched in the head, having her neck yanked and thrown to the floor by Daishana Jackson while other people were in the room. At least one person was filming instead of helping. A man's voice can be heard telling Shanquella to fight back, and she answers with a single weak word, no. That wasn't a woman who drank too much. That was a woman being beaten while people she trusted watched it happen.
Quilla, can you at least fight back?
No. Why she not fighting?
At least something. At least fight back, something.
Get up, bro. Get up.
The friends had already told Shanquella's family a very different tale, and years later, when the FBI finally released some of its files, you could hear how ugly the private accounts got. Watch an investigative reporter read out what one witness described seeing.
FBI records show they spoke to a redacted person who referenced that fight and said they aren't sure what happened. But the unknown person claimed Shanquella's friend said she was drinking and hit her head on the toilet. The documents say the person also told investigators they saw pictures of Shanquella's body and said there are bruises on her and she looks like she was stomped on.
Stomped on. Sit with that word for a second, because it's a very long way from alcohol poisoning. And the 2 autopsies performed on Shanquella's body only deepened the fight over what really killed her, because they didn't agree, and that disagreement is a huge part of why nobody has ever stood trial. The autopsy done in Mexico listed her cause of death as a severe spinal cord injury and atlas luxation, which is a dislocation right at the very top of the neck, and ruled it a violent death, estimating she died about 15 minutes after the injury. There was no mention of alcohol poisoning as the thing that killed her. Then her body was brought back to the United States, and a second autopsy was performed in North Carolina, and that one landed in a different place. The American examiner reported the spine intact and found no alcohol in her system at all, which directly contradicted the group's original story about drinking, while also muddying the Mexican finding about the broken neck. So one report says her neck was broken in a violent attack, the other says her spine was fine, and both of them agree on one thing, which is that the alcohol poisoning story the friends told was not true. While the doctors argued, the two countries went to work, and here the paths split hard. Mexican prosecutors reopened the case as a possible femicide, which is a gender-based killing under Mexican law, and on November 23, 2022, they issued an arrest warrant for the direct aggressor, identified as Daishana Jackson, and asked for her to be extradited. On the American side, the FBI opened its own investigation, went down to the resort and interviewed people. And then, in April of 2023, the federal prosecutors announced they would not bring charges, saying they didn't have enough evidence to move forward. A warrant in one country, a closed file in the other, and a woman on video getting beaten in between the two.
The death of a Charlotte woman while on vacation has the attention of federal investigators, but several questions remain about what happened to Shanquella Robinson. Many of those questions take aim at the group of friends that were with her when she was mysteriously found. Today, WBTV's Siobhan Bryan went to the homes of some of those people who reportedly joined her on that trip.
Shanquella Robinson is now in her final resting place, but her family simply can't find peace with so many questions remaining about what really happened to her that turned a vacation to tragedy. The sound of a doorbell camera, but otherwise silence as I tried to visit two of the people who joined Shanquella on what would be her final vacation. These friends reportedly told her parents she died from alcohol poisoning in Cabo, Mexico. We now know an autopsy revealed a cracked spine. This after a disturbing video, now viral, appears to show the 25-year-old involved in a fight. This weekend, hundreds attended her funeral at Macedonia Baptist Church. Activist Tamika Mallory spoke at the service, promising to help solve the mystery of her untimely death as her family awaits answers and justice.
Losing a loved one in the heinous way in which has happened to Shanquella, there probably will never be peace for them, but there cannot just be an unopened situation. It has to be closed with truth, and it has to be that there is accountability for those who are responsible for her.
And a GoFundMe for the family has surpassed its goal, raising more than $350,000. This as the family continues to press for answers, both from Mexican investigators and the FBI. And WBTV will, of course, stay on top of this evolving investigation and bring you updates along the way on air and on WBTV.com. In Charlotte, I'm Siobhan Bryan, WBTV, on your side.
Early on, even the United States government seemed ready to wave the whole thing off. The State Department said there was no clear evidence of foul play, a statement that aged terribly the moment the video started spreading. By then, Shanquella's body had already been brought home in the middle of November, and her family had buried her in Charlotte on the 19th, still believing at that point the version of events they had been handed. It was only after they laid her to rest that the truth began clawing its way to the surface, which is a special kind of cruelty of its own. What finally moved anyone at all was the internet. The video spread across social media so fast and so widely that ordinary people, not police, forced the case back into the light, and the renewed public attention pushed Mexican authorities to revisit the scene and reclassify what had happened. The one person the Mexican warrant named didn't exactly stay easy to find either. The woman accused of being the main aggressor in that footage quietly changed the name she goes by, and a local reporter laid it out plainly.
He's asking for those charges to be dropped. So Imani Green, she changed her name. Her name was Daishana Jackson, but now she goes by Imani Green. She has filed so that for the judge to dismiss the wrongful lawsuit against her. She claims that she wasn't properly served in the court documents and says the statute of limitation has expired. Now, we did reach out to Shanquella Robinson's family attorney, Sue Ann Robinson, and she says that this information is incorrect. So, it's gonna, I guess, it kind of all comes down to what the judge decides at the end on if this case is going to be dismissed or not. However, the judge did dismiss the lawsuit against the FBI and the Department of State. Now, another thing, again, this has been a long, ongoing case. The travel maids, when they first came back from the trip, they spoke to the family and told them that she had of alcohol poisoning, but her records and so forth showed that she had a broken neck and a severed spinal cord injury on that trip, which all go along with that mysterious death of hers. And then that video that went viral after that, showing her getting beaten by one of those folks on the trip, tells a different tale. So, her family has been fighting for justice for a very long time, just really wanting someone to be held accountable in her. Now, at last check, no final ruling has been made yet on the dismissal request. Nick?
And Jesse, before I let you go, on a personal note, like, at least since I've been here over a year and a half, and you've been covering this story a lot. Like, what has it been like covering this story? Because there's been so many twists and turns since this happened.
There have been a lot of twists and turns, and it's been a long time, and there's been a lot of emotions tied to this case. I remember going to her funeral, and hundreds of people showed up wearing pink and, showing support for her, people who knew her, people who didn't know her. And I think that the question continues. You go on a trip, vacation with who you believe are 6 friends of yours. And then, if you're a family member of Shanquella Robinson, it's like, wait, what happened to my child? She went on this trip. You see this video of her being beaten, and there's so many questions. Why would this happen? Why would others sit around and, record it, and not do anything to stop it?
When Shanquella's family later took their fight to civil court, this same woman, now going by Imani Green, didn't admit to the attack in that video. Instead, she filed a response claiming self-defense, arguing that Shanquella was belligerent and provocative because of her drinking and that Shanquella had assumed the risk of what happened to her. She also argued the case was filed too late and that she was never properly served. So the defense to a video that shows a naked woman being beaten on the floor is in effect that the woman on the floor started it. You already heard people online arguing both sides of that exact question, and you can understand why the family finds it unbearable. The family has never accepted that the American system simply had nothing to work with. In March of 2023, civil rights attorney Ben Crump and the family sent a letter to United States officials naming the woman they blamed and pushing for either her extradition to Mexico or federal murder charges here at home, arguing that because the crime crossed borders, it belonged in federal court. Nothing came of it. The warrant in Mexico still sits there unexecuted. No extradition ever happened, and the woman it names has gone on living her life in the United States under a different name. There were smaller details that came out later that somehow made it colder, not warmer. Attorneys pushing for justice pointed to statements from resort staff, and a customer service worker who had dealt with the group described the aftermath in a way that sticks with you.
The assistant described most of the group as relaxed and calm. The assistant claims that Jackson also gave a, quote, very indifferent, very cold hug after leaving the area. The assistant said that they heard laughter. It's kind of chilling stuff to hear.
On the same day, a young woman had just died in their villa. That is the detail that keeps Shanquella's parents up at night, and her father has never stopped saying it out loud in public. When newly released FBI files put fresh attention on the case, he did not hide how it felt.
Just heard to the court that these 6 individuals out here came back to the United States soil, walking around here like they ain't did nothing.
A reporter who has followed this case since the beginning summed up on the anniversary of her death just how far the Mexican side got and how completely it stalled.
We know that the Mexican authorities did identify one person as the main aggressor in the case and wanted that person indicted and brought to Mexico to face charges. That never happened.
Her father has taken on the job of speaking for a daughter who cannot speak for herself, showing up to hearing after hearing so that her name stays in the room.
Only thing I can do is stand for Shanquella and talk. Be her mouth, be her voice, because she didn't deserve this at all.
The family's main path to any kind of accountability is now a civil lawsuit because the criminal doors have mostly closed. In October of 2024, Shanquella's mother sued the Cabo Six, along with the FBI and the State Department, for $100 million, accusing the group of wrongful death, battery, negligence, and conspiracy, and accusing the federal agencies of botching the investigation. The claims against the government did not survive. A judge dismissed the case against the FBI and the State Department in June of 2025, which narrowed everything down to the 6 people who were in that villa. From there, the whole thing got tangled in a long fight over where the case even belongs, with defendants arguing it should be heard in Mexico rather than North Carolina, and a federal judge eventually questioning whether the remaining claims should move down to state court. That is where the case sits now, still crawling through the system with no trial date and no one held responsible. There is one more thread worth mentioning because it shows how badly people still want answers. In early 2026, a popular true crime podcast revisited the case and put forward an anonymous man who claimed he was one of the men on the trip and had never spoken to police. He described a 3 a.m. phone call from Dejanay Jackson the night before the fight, saying she was crying, that everyone in the villa was drunk, that a broken glass had cut her foot, and that she wanted Shanquella to leave because it was her own birthday. The problem is that no major outlet could verify who this man was or whether any of it was true, and none of it has moved the case forward 1 inch. It is another loose thread in a case that is made of loose threads, and it takes us right back to that original, awful question that started this whole thing. On the 3rd anniversary of Shanquella's death in October of 2025, the family's attorneys called the fact that no criminal charges had ever been filed not only heartbreaking but unacceptable, and said the family had endured 3 years of silence, delays, and denials, and still they stood there demanding the accountability their daughter deserved. Shanquella flew out to celebrate a birthday with friends. There's video of her being beaten, and yet 3 years on, nobody is in a cell. That is our first woman. Our second woman lived in a completely different world in a different city, and she wasn't thousands of miles from home when it happened. Kenesha Gaines was in her own neighborhood, at a party full of people she knew, and the danger did not come from inside the house, it came rolling up the street. But the ending rhymes with Shanquella's in the way that matters most, because a young Black woman was killed at a celebration, and years later her family is still standing there with their hands open, waiting for a justice that has never come. Kenesha Gaines was 21 years old, and everyone who knew her called her Nisha. She was born in July of 2002 and raised across the south and west sides of Chicago and neighborhoods where the sound of gunfire was never far away. By the summer of 2023, she had finally gotten her feet under her. She had found a job in home health care that she was proud of, and she was running a small hairstyling business called Cutie Collections, doing quick weaves, sew-ins, and custom wigs, sharing her work online and building a name for herself. Most of all, she was a mother with a 3-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter, and by every account, those 2 babies were the center of her entire world. Her own mother described her in the simplest, warmest way you can describe somebody.
Kenesha was a funny everything. She was so outgoing. She was the queen of the world.
On the night of July 30th, 2023, Kenesha went to a luau-themed backyard birthday party in the 1500 block of South Keeler Avenue in the North Lawndale neighborhood on the west side of Chicago. It was a warm summer night. Women were together celebrating, and by all accounts, it was exactly the kind of ordinary good time that a 21-year-old is supposed to be able to have. It was getting toward 1 in the morning when the whole thing turned into a nightmare. A black Jeep pulled up to the gathering, and several people got out holding guns and opened fire into the crowd, shouting as they did it. Witnesses reported the gunmen yelling threats like "We got you" before the shooting started, which tells you this was not random spray from a passing car. Somebody drove to that address on purpose. When it was over, 9 people were struck by gunfire. 8 of them survived, most of them women in their 20s and early 30s, and their bodies took the kind of damage that stays with a person for the rest of their life. One 28-year-old woman was shot 8 times in the torso and left in critical condition, fighting for her life at the hospital. Others were hit in the thigh, the wrist, the knee, the shoulder, the arm. Some were grazed. All of them were just there to celebrate a birthday. And the one person in that yard who did not survive was Kenesha. She was shot in the face and rushed to Mount Sinai Hospital, where she died, and she left those 2 small children behind. You already know how this case got to the family in the first place because it opened this video, but it's worth watching the whole ambush laid out again in plain language because the words the gunman is said to have used matter.
A man pull up and he yell out, "I got you," before he started firing at a crowd of 9 women.
That is the part that has always haunted North Lawndale. A yard full of women celebrating, and someone shows up specifically to shoot into them. Community leaders stood up in front of cameras afterwards and said the thing everyone was thinking out loud.
There's a coward amongst our community will take out their frustration in women. We're supposed to protect our women in our communities.
To understand why this loss hit Kenesha's mother the way it did, you have to understand that this was not the first child she had lost to a bullet. Her mother, Natasha Graham, who most people call Tasha, had already buried a son. Kenesha's brother, Kayshawn Graham, was just 18 years old when he was shot and killed in April of 2019 during an argument over marijuana in the Gresham neighborhood, shot in the back, and no one was ever arrested for that either. After losing Kayshawn, Tasha became a stricter, more frightened parent, keeping her girls close and limiting how much they went outside because the one thing she was most afraid of in this world was losing another child the same way. Listen to how she carried those 2 losses at once.
The neighborhood in shambles, very much on edge. That's the condition of neighborhood residents this afternoon after that violence erupted. And you are right, while one of those 8 women who was wounded remains hospitalized in critical condition this afternoon, the mother of the victim is remembering a daughter taken too soon.
Unbearably hurt. That's my oldest daughter.
Natasha Graham struggles with her painful reality. She's lost another one of her children to gun violence. 21-year-old Kenesha Gaines was killed and 8 other women wounded when someone opened fire in the city's North Lawndale neighborhood overnight.
Kenesha was a funny everything. She was so outgoing. She was the queen of the world.
The happened early Sunday morning in the 1500 block of South Keeler Avenue on Chicago's west side just before 1 a.m. Police say it was as Gaines and a group of women who gathered there for a luau party, a Hawaiian-themed birthday celebration, that a black Jeep approached. Without warning, multiple unknown suspects armed with got out and started shooting at the women.
With all of these women being, some has to be personal. Why would you just unload on a yard or a house full of women that was here on the outside celebrating someone's birthday?
All the victims were shot and wounded and range in age from 20 to 33 years old, while Gaines was in the face and later died. A 28-year-old woman who was struck 8 times remains hospitalized in critical condition.
It's over with. You can't get up. Let me go outside. You can't even go outside no more.
And while the violence has left neighborhood residents on edge, relatives once again deal with the trauma of loss. The family of Kenesha Gaines says she was a home healthcare worker and a part-time stylist. She leaves behind a 3-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. This afternoon, amid the grief, there's also a mother's anger over all the guns on the streets and those willing to use them, as well as a plea for justice for the violence to stop. Now, the Chicago Police Department saying that its crime victims unit is going to reach out to neighborhood residents in addition to the survivors of this attack, trying to support them and help them deal with their trauma. They say that they're going to have a center open for that tomorrow. In the meantime, Area 4 detectives are continuing to sift through all of the evidence that they've gathered in hopes of being able to locate the people responsible for this heinous crime. Kenesha's 18-year-old brother, Kayshawn, was a victim of violence in 2019.
Well, what you got left, you just try and hold on to it as close as you can. Don't let your kids outside.
Her greatest fear came true anyway. In the days after the shooting, Tasha spent hours at the morgue trying to accept that the body in front of her was really her daughter, saying it was hard to even believe it was her. She talked about the reconciliation she and Kenesha had reached after some hard teenage years, how her daughter had come to her and told her, "I get it, I understand," and how they had built a really good relationship right before all of this. And she talked about the grandchildren she now had to care for, one of whom kept asking for her mommy, not understanding that her mommy wasn't coming back. When it came time to bury Kenesha, the family was not prepared for any of it, and they launched a fundraiser to cover her funeral with a goal of $20,000, a page that has crept up to only a few thousand over the years since, a small and quiet number that tells you exactly how fast the rest of the world moved on. Tasha's grief widened into something bigger than her own family, a plea for every child who has been caught in this kind of violence when she said, "These children, not only my daughter, but every child that gets shot, they deserve some type of justice." Underneath the grief, there was also anger too, an anger at how many guns are on the streets and how many people are willing to use them, running right alongside a simple plea for the shooting to stop. Advocacy groups counted her among the 9 people shot, 8 of them women, 1 of them killed, and used her death to demand that something finally change. And here is where Kenesha's case takes a turn that will feel very familiar after Shanquella's story, because it's once again about the people who were supposed to be close to her. As the months passed with no arrests, the family started to believe that the answers were sitting right there among the very people who kept posting "Rest in peace." A creator who dug into the case laid out what Nisha's own sister had said publicly.
The reason I say quote-unquote homegirls is because after I did a little more investigation, I seen a live video where Kenesha's sister, if I'm not mistaken, was speaking out saying that those friends were fake. She accused the friends of knowing more information and knowing exactly what went on and who did what, but refusing to tell them anything. Instead of answering their questions, the friends had started blocking the family members from access to anything and just steady posting Nisha online. So it was making the family mad. Like, how would you sit up here and say rest in peace to your friend and that's your best friend, but you won't even tell us who did it, which I understand that.
That is the same wound that runs through this entire video. A young woman is dead. The people who were right there when it happened seem to know more than they are saying, and the family is left on the outside begging for a truth that everyone around them appears to be holding back. The Chicago Police Department assigned Area 4 detectives to the case and asked the public for tips. But as of the most recent information available heading into 2025, no arrests have been made and no motive has ever been publicly confirmed. This was not some rare event in a quiet city either. There is a bitter symmetry in what the family is now living through, because Kenesha's death and her brother Kashawn's death share the same ending, which is no ending at all. 2 of Tasha's children were shot to death 4 years apart, and in both cases, the people who pulled the trigger were never caught, leaving one mother to carry 2 open files and 2 graves at the same time. When a family has to grieve twice and get answers 0 times, you start to understand why trust in the system runs so thin in these neighborhoods. This shooting happened during a violent stretch in a year when Chicago led the entire country in mass shootings, with 32 separate incidents where 4 or more people were struck, which is part of why cases like this one can slip out of the headlines so fast. North Lawndale itself is one of the West Side neighborhoods that carries the heaviest weight of that violence, an area where even in a year when shootings across the city were dropping, the numbers in North Lawndale were going the other way. For a family already living in that reality, the odds were never on their side. In the immediate aftermath, the city did try to respond, though many felt it was far too small. The police department's Crime Victim Services Unit set up a 1-day support center on July 31st at the Deliverance Temple Church in North Lawndale, offering counseling, therapy dogs, and victim compensation help. It was the second such pop-up center in a single year, and community leaders pointed out the obvious problem, which is that one afternoon of therapy dogs cannot begin to touch the kind of trauma that a mass shooting leaves behind in a neighborhood. The center handed out stress balls and Play-Doh alongside the counseling in the victim compensation forms, and faith and community leaders, including a rabbi named Michael Ben Yosef and Alderman Monique Scott, criticized the 1-day setup as nowhere near enough for wounds that were going to last years.
In Chicago, where 9 people are Even more unusual when all victims were women. One of them shortly after being transported here to Mount Sinai Hospital, and another victim, a 28-year-old woman, suffered 8 shot wounds. She is right now inside fighting for her life as community leaders and that ward's alderperson are now imploring the community and the public to come forward with any information that could lead to the
It is heartbreaking that a mother has to bury her 21-year-old daughter that leaves 2 kids. That's heartbreaking.
21-year-old Kenesha Gaines, a mother of 2, in the face just before 1 a.m., rushed to Mount Sinai Hospital where she Gaines had been out with friends at a party.
And I'm tearing up because I have a 15-year-old daughter, and to think that I'll let her go out into the world and something like this tragically happened to have a good time at a luau. I'm heartbroken.
Gaines was one of 9 women when police say a black Jeep pulled up to the 1500 block of South Keeler and several men inside opened fire. The women range in age from their early 20s through their early 30s. Another woman was 8 times and is right now fighting for her life at Mount Sinai. And with no one in custody, community leaders are begging the public for leads.
There's a coward amongst our community will take out their frustration in women. We're supposed to protect our women in our communities.
If it's your son, if it's your grandson, if it's your nephew, if it's your friend, if it's your cousin, we must speak out.
CPD's Crime Victim Services Unit has reached out to survivors of the to provide resources to them, while Area 4 detectives want to hear from you if you know anything about who's responsible.
It affects the community as a whole. And you don't often, this is not something that's normal where 9 people are shot at one time.
And as a result of this, the Chicago Police Department's Crime Victim Services Unit is going to be hosting an event tomorrow in North Lawndale. They are going to be offering confidential counseling, victim services for children. Detectives will be on hand to get any tips. They're going to have therapy dogs as well. It runs from 1 p.m. until 7 p.m. It's happening at Deliverance Temple Church. That is at 1457 South Kaminsky Avenue. We are live tonight right outside Mount Sinai Hospital. Anthony Ponce, Fox 32, Chicago.
Advocates online framed the attack within a bigger pattern too, describing it as an example of misogynoir, the specific overlap of anti-black racism and misogyny, and asking a question that nobody in power ever really answered, which is why a yard full of black women became a target in the first place. Groups like Good Kids Mad City sent their condolences and called for the violence to stop, while by 2025, the case had faded so far from the news that a podcast called No Tears for Black Girls revisited it just to keep her name from disappearing entirely. Even the reporters covering it could not keep their professional distance. One anchor, reading the details on air, broke down thinking about her own daughter.
And I'm tearing up because I have a 15-year-old daughter, and to think that I'll let her go out into the world and something like this tragically happened to have a good time at a luau. I'm heartbroken.
Through it all, Tasha has tried to keep standing for her surviving family and for the 2 grandchildren who now depend on her. She has said plainly that she refuses to let this break her, and you can hear both the exhaustion and the steel in how she says it.
So I'm going to continue to be the strong one. I'm going to help my family, and we're going to make it past this.
She has also said over and over the thing that no parent should ever have to fight for, which is simply the right for young people to gather without being hunted. Watch her ask for the smallest, most basic thing in the world.
Our kids, our teenagers should be able to go hang out. Our young kids should be able to play outside. This should be allowed. It shouldn't always be violence every time the young adults decide to go and hang out.
That is 2 women now, Shanquella and Kenesha, both killed at a celebration, both surrounded by people, and both leaving behind families who believe someone close by knows exactly what happened and simply will not say. Our third woman is a little different from the first 2 because she was not the target of the people she was with, and she didn't die at a party. She died in a car, in traffic, on an ordinary weekday afternoon, with her 5-year-old son strapped into the back seat. Her ending was fast and it was loud, and the most heartbreaking part is that in her last seconds alive, she still found a way to tell the world exactly who did it. Her name was Arkia Berry, and almost everyone called her Kia. She was 28 years old, born in September of 1995, and she graduated from A.H. Parker High School before getting her cosmetology license. She built herself up into a working hairstylist with a real local following, promoting her styles on an Instagram account with a few thousand followers and a booking link in her bio. Friends and clients described her as talented, warm, outspoken, and fiercely loyal. But the thing that mattered most to Kia was her little boy. Relatives called her a lovely soul, full of life and plans, a young woman who was outspoken but kind and who put her role as a mother ahead of everything else. That little boy was 5-year-old Landon Brooks, and he was the light of her life. He was born in March of 2019. He loved football, he played in a youth league, and he was getting ready to start kindergarten in the fall of 2024. His coach remembered a kid with a bright smile who had been with the team just hours before he was killed. Kia's cousin, Anaya Berry, described the two of them as inseparable, like two peas in a pod, and said Kia made sure her son had everything he needed. In that same interview, Anaya said something about this family that will stop you cold, because Landon's father had already lost a parent before he lost his mother. Ladarius Brooks was killed in a shooting back in 2020, found shot inside an apartment that had been set on fire in a case that remains unsolved and years on still has no arrests. So this little boy was born into a family that had already been hollowed out once by gunfire before he was even old enough to remember it. And then the same thing came back for him and his mother. The third person in that car was Kia's boyfriend, 28-year-old Eric Ashley Jr., who was from Hoover and who had no criminal record, the same as Kia and the same as little Landon. 3 people, one of them a child, none of them with anything in their past that would explain what came for them on the afternoon of July 13th, 2024. It happened in the Echo Highlands neighborhood on Indian Summer Drive near the entrance to a park. What the neighbors first thought was a car accident turned out to be something far worse when officers arrived. The scene told a story of its own. Their blue Nissan Maxima had jumped a curb and crashed into someone's front yard, riddled with bullet holes, mostly on the passenger side, with between 20 and 30 shell casings scattered across the park entrance and the road. Police quickly said the shooting was targeted, not random, and one small detail told them there had been no robbery because there was money left scattered at the scene. Whoever did this didn't come for anyone's wallet. They came to kill. And the way the car had rolled forward suggested that Eric may have kept driving for a few desperate seconds after the gunfire started, trying to get everyone out of there before the crash finally stopped them. Then there's the detail that turned this from a horrifying triple murder into a case that made national headlines, and it's the detail I promised you at the top. In the middle of that ambush, Kia did something almost impossible to imagine a person doing while their own life is ending. According to police, at 5:09 in the evening, as the gunfire was happening, Kia sent a text message to a friend, and that message was a single word, a name, Jaco. Investigators believe in the last moments of her life, with her son in the back seat, Kia used her final act to name the person she believed was killing them. That one word became the thread that police would pull on for the next several months.
We're also learning about the 3 victims in yesterday's triple homicide on Indian Summer Drive.
Yeah, so one of those, a 5-year-old boy. Investigators say Eric Ashley, Arkia Berry, and her 5-year-old son Landon Brooks were fatally shot yesterday evening around 5:30. Officers found them in a crashed car on Indian Summer Drive. That's right near the Echo Highlands neighborhood. First responders confirmed they at the scene. Officers say the driver of the car crashed into someone's yard following the shooting.
We've deployed all of our detectives in the Birmingham Police Department to focus on these 2 particular cases to bring justice. And for those who are responsible for those heinous crimes, I want you to know that we will be coming for you with full force. With every piece of law enforcement that we have, we will be coming for you.
No one is in custody. Well, Birmingham police will be providing a QR code for the community. You can see that right here and scan it on your screen so you can upload evidence in the triple and quadruple homicide investigations if you know anything.
Because Jacko was a nickname, and it belonged to a specific man. Investigators say that name was saved in Eric's phone too, and that just before the shooting, Eric had called that number himself. The phone records showed Eric contacting a contact saved as Jacko at 5:08 in the evening, right as the victim's car pulled into the neighborhood, which suggested to police that this was a planned meeting, not a chance encounter. Cell tower data placed the phones in the same area. Surveillance footage caught a lime green Kia Soul entering the neighborhood right before the victim's car, and then fleeing at high speed right after the crash alert went out. That green Kia Soul was later burned in another part of the city, and it turned out to have been stolen. Piece by piece, the movements of that afternoon started to form a picture. That stolen Kia was tracked through the city's flock camera network and later recovered burned, worked by Birmingham police alongside federal ATF agents. Surveillance had also caught a black Mercedes tailing that green Kia around the neighborhood several times earlier that same day, and the person driving that Mercedes turned out to be a friend of the victims, which is part of how police found their key witness in the first place. It took until February of 2025 for that picture to lead to an arrest when a 25-year-old Birmingham man named Jacorian Deshaun McGregor was taken into custody and charged with capital murder for killing 2 or more people. Under Alabama law, that specific charge, causing the deaths of 2 or more people in one course of conduct, is what turns this into a death penalty case. And it ties all 3 of the victims together in a single count: the mother, her boyfriend, and the 5-year-old boy in the back seat. Jacorian's nickname, according to investigators, is Jacko. He was arrested with the help of the U.S. Marshals, and he was booked into the Jefferson County Jail with no bond, which is standard when the charge is a capital offense that can carry the death penalty in Alabama. Court records show McGregor was not new to the system, with a prior conviction for receiving stolen property that had left him on probation, plus open warrants for failing to appear on earlier robbery and stolen property cases. He was booked as a 6'2", 165-pound man, and because a capital charge in Alabama can carry the death penalty or life without parole, he was held with no bond at all. When the police first announced the deaths, the department made a promise to whoever was responsible, and it is worth hearing in their own words.
And for those who are responsible for those heinous crimes, I want you to know that we will be coming for you with full force. With every piece of law enforcement that we have, we will be coming for you.
At a preliminary hearing in April of 2025, a Birmingham homicide detective named Jarvelius Tolliver laid out the case in front of a judge. He testified about the phone calls and the text with the nickname, about the cell tower pings placing McGregor nearby, and about the stolen green Kia Soul tracked on camera and later found burned. He also testified about a key witness, a person who had been driving a black Mercedes and following that green Kia around the neighborhood that day, a person who admitted being friends with the victims. According to the detective, that witness told police that McGregor confessed to the shooting afterwards, saying he had shot, and identified him as the driver of that green Kia. On top of that, investigators said that when they searched McGregor's phone, they found deleted messages, and that recovered fragments included associates telling him to lay low and stay hidden, and that a search of his home turned up guns and drugs. The defense pushed back hard, and this is where the case, like the other 2 in this video, gets complicated. McGregor's attorney, John Robbins, argued that everything the state had was circumstantial. He pointed out that there was no video of anyone shooting from the Kia, no fingerprints and no DNA tying McGregor to that stolen car, and no eyewitness who saw him pull a trigger. He even pressed the detective on how strange it was that the stolen Kia had never been reported stolen by its owner in the first place. The judge listened to all of it and still found there was enough probable cause to send the case to a grand jury, which is the next step towards a formal trial. But as of early 2026, no grand jury indictment has been publicly reported, no trial date has been set, and McGregor remains sitting in a cell charged but not yet tried. Everyone should remember that a charge is not a conviction, and McGregor has the right to have this case tested in front of a jury, which so far has not happened. That waiting is its own kind of pain for the people who loved these three. A capital case in Alabama does not move fast, and the record shows McGregor still sitting as a pre-trial inmate with no scheduled court dates well into the following year, the case parked at the grand jury stage while a family waits for the next step. A dying woman managed to name the person she blamed in the last seconds of her life. Police made an arrest, and even then, the road to a courtroom has been slow, uncertain, and far from over. As for why anyone would murder a mother, her boyfriend, and a 5-year-old child in daylight, the honest answer is that the official record does not say. The police classified the attack as targeted, but did not release a motive. Online, true crime narrators have floated a theory that the meeting was over money, that Eric had withdrawn around $2,000 that went missing, tied to a debt possibly connected to drugs, but no mainstream outlet and no court testimony has confirmed any of that, so it stays exactly where it belongs, in the category of rumor. It's easy to see why people reach for a story like that, because the human mind wants a reason big enough to match the horror of a dead 5-year-old. But a reason that cannot be verified is not the same as a fact, and it's worth being honest that we simply don't know why this happened. What is not rumor is the grief this left behind, and the frustration of a community that watched a child die and then watched people go quiet. The mayor of Birmingham publicly begged the city to break what he called a code of silence and pointed to a reward of up to $25,000 for anyone willing to come forward. At the vigil, the people who loved Landon tried to make sense of it for the children he left behind on his football team, and his coach spoke about what it means to have to step in and answer the questions a 5-year-old's friends don't know how to ask. Dozens gathered to release balloons and remember a little boy's joy, and the killings landed in the middle of a deadly stretch that a Birmingham official openly called one of the most tragic days he'd seen in his time on the job.
Friends gathering for a vigil tonight after a 5-year-old little boy was among 3 people shot and killed in Echo Highlands Park over the weekend.
Violence. When I say stop, you say violence. Stop the violence. Stop the violence.
5-year-old Landon Brooks, his mom, 29-year-old Arkia Berry, and Eric Ashley Jr. were sitting in a car on Indian Summer Drive when someone opened fire on them. At a vigil tonight in Wahoma Park, where Landon played youth football, his coaches were understandably emotional.
So, we most definitely need answers. You know, you didn't only take him, you took his mama. You know, like I said, me and Coach, we have him every day. Every day. Every day he asks us how he doing, and deep down inside we know he ain't doing good. Because once again, I told you, he already didn't have his dad. You know, so like a lot of kids come out here, this they comfort zone. This they time to like express themselves. You know, some kids don't know how to express themselves to their parents. And we have to step up and be there for them. We have to answer questions that they don't know how to answer.
Birmingham police have yet to make any arrests in this investigation.
So there are our 3 women, and when you lay them side by side, the pattern is almost too clean. Shanquella Robinson flew out to a birthday trip with 6 friends. There's video of her being beaten, and the people who were in that villa have never faced a criminal trial, while the woman accused of the attack changed her name and argued self-defense. Kenesha Gaines went to a backyard birthday party in her own city, got shot in the face by people who drove up specifically to hurt that crowd of women, and her family believes the so-called friends who survived know exactly who did it and refuse to say. And Arkia Berry died in a car with her little boy in the back, used her last breath to text the name of the man she blamed, and even with an arrest and that dying message, the case has stalled out short of a trial. 3 black women, 3 celebrations or ordinary afternoons that turned into crime scenes, and in every single one of them, the truth seems to be sitting inside a circle of people who have decided that their silence is worth more than these women's lives. The lesson here is not a comfortable one, and it's not about strangers. In all 3 of these stories, the danger was standing close, and the wall that justice keeps hitting is not a lack of information. It's a lack of people willing to say what they know. Evidence gets you an arrest, but it's human beings, friends, witnesses, and neighbors who turn an arrest into accountability. And when those people go quiet, families like these get to grow old waiting for a trial that never starts. Rest in peace to all 3 of them, to Shanquella Robinson, to Kenesha Gaines, and to Arkia Berry and her little boy, Landon. If you're watching this and you know something about any one of these cases, understand that you might be the one piece that finally lets one of these mothers sleep at night. And there are anonymous ways to pass that information along without ever putting your own name on it. Somebody out there is holding an answer that a grieving family has been begging for, and choosing to say it could be the difference between another closed casket with no closure and an actual day in court.